We're going to move on now. We're joined by someone who doesn't feel bullied and harassed, or at least not yet, hopefully. The Urban Infrastructure Minister, Paul Fletcher, joins me here in the studio. Thanks for your company.
Good to be with you, Peter.
All right, I'll do my best, though. Let's have a conversation about some of the divisions internally. The Black Hand. Did you attend it?
No.
No, but you're part of the moderate clique within the Liberal Party, aren't you?
I'm a mainstream Liberal. We have a wide range of views and philosophies within the Liberal Party. We work together. We work very constructively together, but we are also an internal democracy. That's how it should work.
How hard is it for Christopher Pyne, when at a pub addressing people in a boisterous mood, it's federal council and all the rest of it, just to say, you know, we need your support, we thank you for your support, we're getting things done, it's too risky to go to the other side, everyone have a drink, have a great night, as opposed to sledge Tony Abbott, offer some hope on same-sex marriage, and all-round create a scenario where he blows up 48 hours of the news cycle?
Well, Peter, I'll leave it to you to engage in the commentary and observation, because I know you enjoy that. What I'm focused on, what my colleagues are focused on, is getting results, getting things through the parliament. In fact, the reason I didn't get there was because I got to bed at 2:30 the night before, because, of course, the House of Reps was voting on the Gonski 2.0 package. We got that through. We got it through. Labor were nowhere to be seen. After doing 27 special deals, they claimed to be committed to fair needs-based education funding. They opposed it for nakedly political reasons. As everybody knows, it was frankly a disgraceful spectacle.
Well, on that though, do you accept that, I mean, I wrote about this on the weekend, do you accept that Labor can be right that the package is a cut from what they promised financially, but equally you guys can be right that it is a stronger embrace of the needs-based funding principles of David Gonski than what Julia Gillard presented? It can be both.
Labor never had the money. They never had the money that they claimed they were going to spend. We saw this time after time from Labor, who completely failed to manage the finances of the nation. And the point that we make in relation to, for example, Gonski, in relation to the NDIS, is that we're serious about delivering and we're serious about funding.
Okay, but on
we've got a plan to get it
Your
done.
urban infrastructure,
Yes.
Infrastructure projects are often done well outside the 4-year forward estimates. They need to be. We all get that, with 10-year time horizons, sometimes even more. The Gonski package, well, at least the version that Labor served up, had that same sort of 10-year time horizon. Both are equally, if you like, unfunded because they're outside the forward estimates. You would be displeased, to say the least, with Labor if they got into power and cancelled infrastructure projects or halved the funding of infrastructure projects purely because they went beyond the forward estimates. That's what they say what you've done to Gonski is.
Well, the point I make is that Labor had no plan as to how they were going to fund these extremely generous deals they did. We do have a plan. We've budgeted for this, and we have a track record of much better financial management than the Labor Party.
Well,
but the other point I make is this. Labor claimed to be committed to a principle, and they sold out that principle for naked political expediency. It's absolutely clear what they were doing, and I was frankly quite shocked to see some of the utterly specious arguments that Tanya Plibersek was running. I mean, you really do have to wonder...
But hang on. Sorry, Mr Fletcher, but when you say you've got a plan to pay for it, your Gonski package, which is less than Labor's, don't get me wrong, $17 billion difference on the price tag, it goes beyond the forward estimates. Just like infrastructure spending or defence spending. Technically, that is unfunded because we don't have a plan beyond the forward estimates of the 4 years. It's always been thus.
But what we do have is a clear plan in terms of what's in the budget and, of course, a set of projections and a trajectory that we are confident can be funded, and we've worked through that very carefully. You can
How can you be confident, though? Look at the budget inaccuracies, not just on your side of politics' watch, but certainly on Labor's.
Because
as well.
the clear difference between the coalition and Labor is that we care about financial management, we care about financial outcomes. That's been our track record for decades. That's why Scott Morrison is working so hard to produce a budget trajectory which gets us to balance in 2020-21. That's why when it comes to things like NDIS, like Gonski, the Labor approach is let's make a big promise and let's not worry about how we're going to deliver it. What we're doing is getting on with delivery, taking the measures that are necessary to make sure that we can fund and deliver these important social outcomes. That's why, for example, we've proposed an increase in the Medicare levy as a means of delivering those outcomes. That's why...
Why not leave the deficit levy on then as well?
That's why we've got the bank levy, which we got through the Parliament last week. Again, getting stuff done, a clear plan, a consistent plan to deliver outcomes.
Why take a deficit levy off when the deficit is as high, virtually, as it was when you took office?
Because that was legislated for a finite period of time, it comes to an end, the legislation comes to an end, and of course Labor criticised us for putting it on.
That is true, but hang on, it was legislated to come off now when the trajectory of debt was also legislated to be, was believed, according to the forecast, to be near return to surplus.
Look, what we have is a clear plan. We have a budget trajectory coming back to balance in 2021 while meeting the obligations of government, delivering on the things people want us to deliver on, social objectives like Gonski funding, fair needs-based education, schools funding for the first time, like the NDIS, also the major infrastructure projects like Western Sydney Airport, $5.3 billion committed in this budget, $8.4 billion for the Inland Rail. Just today we've announced a $1.5 billion package for regional rail in Victoria. So we're getting on with delivering.
Tell me about that one. I mean, that's one that has a profound impact on a number of electorates in the area, one of which is Sarah Henderson's.
Look, it's a very important set of measures that we have reached agreement on with the Victorian government. Some $1.5 billion. They're also putting in $150 million. For example, Ballarat line, North East line and so on, Geelong. Nearly 1,000 jobs, as the Prime Minister has made the point today. Very important in terms of jobs in regional Victoria. Also, we've committed in the budget to $30 million for a business case for a rail link between Melbourne City and Tullamarine Airport. You know, there's direct rail from the city to the airport in Brisbane, in Sydney. In Perth, it's being built at the moment, the Perth to Forestfield rail link. Melbourne doesn't have it. A city of the scale of Melbourne, of the importance of Melbourne, deserves to have a rail connection from the city to the airport. We've put that on the table with $30 million in funding for business case and planning, and one of the things that we're looking forward to working with the Victorian government on, building on today's announcement, is getting down to the planning of that and spending that $30 million so we can get a plan locked in as quickly as possible.
I just want to go back to same-sex marriage, not the comments from Christopher Pyne, but the issue. The Prime Minister has reaffirmed the decision to stick to the plebiscite because that's the policy that you took to the last election. Now, I or anyone else may not think that that's the best way to go, or like Dean Smith, I might prefer that the parliamentary system was honoured through a free vote. That's by the by. You took it to the election. I get why you might want to stick to it. But I'm interested in your thoughts about what you would like to take to the next election. I sat here next to your colleague, backbench colleague Craig Kelly yesterday, and he said ultimately this will be a decision that the executive and the government will come to collectively, but for his part, he will be arguing for the plebiscite to be once again taken to the next election as a policy. For you personally, you can talk about this because there's no party position yet, what would you like to see it be for the next election?
Look, what I want us to do is be in a position to deliver on the policy we took to the last election, which was to have a plebiscite. The person who's blocking that is Bill Shorten.
Even as a postal vote?
The people who are blocking it are the Greens. Bill Shorten has in the past supported a plebiscite. The Greens in the past have supported a plebiscite. We took legislation, we got it through the House of Reps, didn't get it through the Senate. We took to the last election a plan to deal with this issue. We sought to execute on that. Bill Shorten and the Greens are blocking this for cynical political reasons.
But even if that's true, let's assume that they will continue to do so, because that's clearly what they're saying. Should the Liberal Party take the same policy to the next election, or should it have a rethink? I get that you may not want to change it in this term because you don't want to be seen to be breaking a promise and all the rest of it. But what about what you take to the next election?
Look, we'll talk about what we take to the next election in the areas of same-sex marriage and a whole lot of other things as we get closer to the election. And I make the point that that's 2 years away. There's a lot of work to do. And what I'm focused on, what all of my ministerial colleagues are focused on, is discharging the responsibilities that we've got. So in my case, for example, Western Sydney Airport, we're committed to getting that delivered by 2026. Huge amount of work to do. Got the funding in the budget. We've committed to get WSA Co, the special purpose company that will build and own the airport, operational or established, I should say, in the first quarter of the next financial year. We want to have initial construction underway by the end of 2018. So I'm very focused on that. I'm focused on our national rail program, $10 billion over 10 years. We've committed to rail in this budget. I'm focused on heavy vehicle user charging and the reform program that we have underway working with the state government. So like my ministerial colleagues, what I'm focused on is a very significant agenda we have to deliver for the Australian people. I think that's what people expect their politicians to
do. In your
be
portfolio, a number of the policies that you've talked about are public transport related. Is it easier to deal with that under a Turnbull Prime Ministership than it was, for example, under an Abbott Prime Ministership. He wrote in battle lines that he was very cynical about the whole issue of public transport. He wasn't a supporter of it.
Look, I gave a speech yesterday talking about the importance of rail, urban rail, in the Turnbull government's policy approach.
But that's a shift, isn't it?
Look, it is. We're spending a commitment of $10 billion over 10 years on rail, on urban rail. That's a significant signal of direction. There's also over $700 million on specific rail projects in Western Australia, subject to satisfactory business cases in the budget. There's the funding commitment for regional rail in Victoria, and often that is better connections between our regional centres and our big cities, because increasingly our big cities operate as a single economic unit with the surrounding regional centres. So certainly the Turnbull government believes there's a significant role for the Commonwealth in urban rail, including rail to the surrounding regional centres. That's why we committed $10 billion over 10 years. And as our cities get larger in population, rail will have an increasingly important role.
Paul Fletcher, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on Newsday.
Thanks.